All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. And yeah, in this one, I want to talk about some of the problems that I'm having with XDefiant. And there's some obviously that are above the surface that could be clearly seen because a lot of you guys have been experiencing all these things, in which we can have a discussion in that in the comment section if you would so please. Because quite frankly, I want to see what you guys have been experiencing, because ever since the launch of season one, there's been a lot of things that a lot of people have been experiencing or whatnot. And shout out to the folks over on PlayStation, because what you guys are experiencing as far as the low frame rates is absolutely terrible. And there's a patch that's on its way for you guys. So early, like sometime probably early next week, is going to get released. So that's going to be a good thing. So the developers, shout out to the devs, man. These guys are doing the absolute best they can. And one of the things that I'm wondering, as far as the devs are concerned, is like how many people are actually working on this game. I would really love to know what the developer count is on this game, because I'm pretty sure that it's a lot smaller than a lot of the other games out there. But at the same time, given XDefiant is not a AAA title, but despite all that, there's still some problems, obviously, that the game has, and a lot of inconsistencies, and a lot of features that are not in the game that should be in the game in order to keep people's attentions. Because as you guys know, when it comes to attention spans, obviously in this day and age, when it comes to attention span, obviously the attention span of gamers are not very long. And at the same time, if players, whether they're casual or competitive or whatnot, if they don't have a reason to come back and play your game because there's something to accomplish, whether it's to grind levels for prestige or other things like that, like doing challenges, as well as a few other things, they're just not gonna stay for too long or come back or whatnot. It's not like the way it used to be back 10 to 15 years ago, to where you could have a simple concept like the original Halo or Halo 2 that didn't even have prestiges or stuff like that, but people would still grind the game because it was that fun to play. Nowadays, things are beyond just fun, and on top of that, gamers have become a lot more picky because they're a lot more familiar. And what I mean by that is, like, for instance, one of the questions, or should I say one of the problems that I'm having with this game is the footstep sounds. I think the footstep sounds are inconsistent, to where sometimes you could hear, to where somebody could be sprinting right next to you that's on the enemy team and you won't hear them, but yet at the same time, the enemy team could be a decent distance from you and you can hear them as if they were right next to you, or if they were right where they are or whatnot. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in terms of where the position of the sounds are, in terms of what you hear compared to what you see on screen. There's a lot of inconsistencies with that. I remember even Black Ops 4 had that sort of inconsistency at some point, if I remember correctly. But but like when I think of games when it comes to sound whoring, obviously things like Modern Warfare 3's Sitrep Pro was stupid overpowered. Dead Silence paired with amplifying Call of Duty Ghost was super overpowered. But yet at the same time, you got other games out there like Black Ops 2 that don't have footstep sounds other than your own, but you can't, your enemies can't hear you, but you can hear your own footsteps. Other than that, like Black Ops 2 didn't have sound whoring. You couldn't hear footsteps at all. So it's like, in terms of enemies footsteps. So but it still worked because of how the map design was. The maps were also a little bit smaller, well, should I say a lot smaller than Call of Duty players were used to at the time, and as well as their design. So they really didn't need to be sound whoring. And I think they decided to like not add it in after players said, hey, there's no sound whoring, because of just how those maps worked and how small they were in comparison to other regular Call of Duty size maps. So it's like it didn't really make much sense, because you'd hear everybody everywhere at the same time and it would cause a lot of chaos. And that's kind of how I feel like with XDefiant, despite the fact that the maps are actually different in terms of the way they work and the structure, the pacing of the game and all that kind of stuff. So and ever since this season 1 update, guys, I'm not gonna lie, there's been a lot of inconsistencies. Like, I had to change my class setup for the M16, which is one of my favorite guns in the game, because all of a sudden it felt like my bullets were firing slower. It felt like my strafe speed was slower. So it's like I had to change things up as much as I could to compensate for that. But yet it still feels weird because it wasn't exactly like it was before. There's even been another time to where it felt like my M16 burst, despite me not changing anything, was firing faster, like at one point, to where things were bursting a lot faster. So again, there's constant like adjustments that I have to make in order to kind of have it feel as familiar as possible. It's very, very, very weird, very weird. Like I mentioned in a previous video, whenever there's like an update, and now that we know of a seasonal update and stuff like that, like you can expect something to feel different or off than what it did before. That was unintended, right? Unintentional, kind of like just like a side effect of the patch, so or the season 1 release or whatnot. So Hopefully the devs know about this, because quite frankly, it's just, I don't know. Or maybe at the most, we may just have to continue to adjust to this side effect, because there are actually, a whole bunch of other things that obviously need to be fixed that are more important than others. Like for instance, the number one thing on the priority list right now needs to be the frame rate issues with the PS5 people, and of course with the netcode. But something that should be as high on the priority list, to be honest, is something that keeps players coming back. Because again, like I may have said already, I've already done 3 takes of this commentary, so I'm just going to say it quickly one more time, and that is that you got to give players a chance to come back, whether it's in the form of prestige, whether it's in the form of challenges. Things like battle pass isn't enough anymore. Back in the days of the old days, 10 to 15 years ago, it's not the same as it was. Games are getting bigger now. Open world games need to be more open world with more stuff to do in them or whatnot, because people are, it's kind of like, honestly, it's kind of like a drug at this point. For a lot of players, they need to have more to do, or else it's just not giving them enough, and they won't play that game, or they'll just go to another game, or they'll say this game is not enough or whatnot. There was at some point in time to where like a 5-hour or 6-hour Call of Duty campaign was, at least for, it wasn't as a big of a deal, back in the day, 10 to 15 years ago, compared to what it is now. You know what I mean? Right now, people have a 3-hour Call of Duty campaign, granted, and that's, yeah, that's definitely a step back, obviously. But the thing is, regardless, if the campaign itself were like, still 5 to 6 hours like it was back in the day, at least from what I could remember, at least if you weren't rushing through it, people would have an issue with that, because it's not, it's not the same dosage anymore. It's like people need, they're used to it, they've adjusted to it, and they need a high, more of a dose in order to achieve the same kind of dopamine effect, so to speak. So a lot of things that XDefiant should have in the game is just not in there from a content perspective. And for a lot of people, starting with the amount of weapons that we did, and the amount of weapons that we're getting, and the maps that we're getting every single month, and all that kind of stuff, and how the way the seasonal structure works, for a lot of people, that's not enough, especially for the what's it called, for the even for your casuals. Like, honestly, even for them, because again, like I said, gaming was different then than what it is now. Even for a game that doesn't have skill-based matchmaking like this one here, XDefiant, I'm pretty sure you guys might be surprised of how many sweats you're finding, right? And that's because of the fact that, again, it's different now than what it was 10 to 15 years ago. And I've made a video talking about this back in the day. So it is what it is, man. Players are more capable and familiar now than what they were back then, But much to my surprise, though, if I go back and play Call of Duty World War II, I just mop the floor with people. Obviously, there's, a few people that are just like, that never left the game, that are absolutely amazing at the game or whatnot. There's a few anomalies here or there, of course, like there is in every single other game. But for the most part, if I were to go in and hop in Call of Duty World War II right now, chances are right now I'd probably play better than I ever played before, because XDefiant has less aim assist. XDefiant just works a lot differently. There's a lot more chaos, but in a Call of Duty World War II, there's a lot more. It's a lot more of a controlled pace game or whatnot. So I would probably mop the floor with people even more than what I did previously before this game came out. So just to kind of give you an example, but which is very weird though, because I don't know, maybe it's because that game is so old. Who knows? And some people are just getting their hands on it now or whatnot. I mean, God knows what it's going to be like when Call of Duty World War II, as well as some other Call of Duties, get released on Game Pass. But yeah, that's just something I kind of wanted to mention real quick in accordance with this particular subject. But I want to know in the comments section, though, guys, what have you been feeling that's significantly different when it comes to the gunplay, the way the guns work and everything else when it comes to the game? I personally think the sound, the footstep sounds need to be changed and adjusted. I think the spawns need to be looked at, in my opinion. And obviously little tweaks with the factions and stuff like that. I only played on the new map one time or twice. And to be honest, I'm not really that crazy about it, but I don't know, maybe I just have to give it more time and just kind of get a feel for it and understand it. But so far, that's just my opinion overall. But I really would like to know that what you guys have been experiencing. And for a lot of you guys, I mean, obviously we enjoy XDefiant. And one of the things we enjoy about XDefiant is the fact that, like, that it's an organic experience, right? But even an organic experience, if it's bland, even that can keep you playing for so long for most people, right? So I want to know, or do you feel that you're playing less or not? Have you stopped playing XDefiant because of this or whatnot? I want to know. And here is the question of the day. And the question is, and I made a video about this, but I'm going to ask it here now. at the end of this commentary. If Black Ops 6 were to all of a sudden say, you know what, we're removing skill-based matchmaking, no more disbanding lobbies, we're removing skill-based matchmaking, engagement optimized matchmaking, so to speak. You know, we've realized that we don't need it. You know, we're doing it, and let's say they stick to their word, right? Let's say they do this. Like, what kind of an impact do you guys think that would have on XDefiant, really, when you think about it? You know, if they were to do that, man, that would be really interesting to see what happens. I think that there's some people that would still come back and play XDefiant, or maybe even stick with XDefiant because of what XDefiant does in certain ways that are more, you know, appealing to them as opposed to Call of Duty. But that would be a really interesting thing to see what happens. But the thing is, number one, they're not going to do that because they don't need to, and number two, one of the reasons they don't need to is because XDefiant, although it is competition, it's not competition. You know, it's a lower tier team in the NBA versus the NBA champs. Simple as that, just to give you an analogy. But at the same time, there are those people that are loyal to that lower tier NBA game, especially if they see that the team is actually trying to get better. And that's kind of what the analogy is with XDefiant to Call of Duty. But anyway, guys, yeah, I definitely have my fair share of problems with this game. And you know, sometimes it is very, very annoying, but it is what it is, and all we can do is hope that it continues to get better. But at the same time, even me as a player, I can tell you that it's, you know, if there's nothing really, if there's not too much more to play for, it could definitely get bland to a point to where you might want to take a break from it, you know. So anyway, with that being said, I want to know in the comment section what your thoughts are overall on the matter. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to watch and or listen. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll catch you guys on the next one.